Let's be honest for a second, Carrie Bradshaw was never the blueprint. I know HBO wanted us to think she was. I know that the Sex and the City marketing machine has been screaming it for decades. But if we're being honest, the actual main character, the only one we could learn anything from and aspire to be, was Samantha Jones. We were sold Carrie as this quirky, lovable mess with the best wardrobe because Sarah Jessica Parker, who plays Carrie, is also the executive producer. We are being tricked, and it shows. There were tensions between Sarah Jessica Parker and Kim Cattrall, who plays Samantha, and I believe this ruined the storyline. Because while the show tried to center Carrie, the only character who actually made sense and the person who actually owned their life and choices was Samantha. And this isn't even something new. Think about the Vampire Diaries. We were all told to worship Elena Gilbert, the eternal damsel, the perpetual victim. Meanwhile, Catherine Pierce, the character that we were supposed to fear, hate, and villainize, is the one that ended up being 10 times more interesting. Elena was fine, but Catherine, she was unforgettable. And this sounds familiar, doesn't it? Now, no one's saying that Samantha was the villain of the show. I mean, that would have been somewhat of a consolation prize. But Samantha was the butt of the joke. Samantha's arc is wild when you look at it in retrospect. They tried to over-sexualize her to the point of insult, to make her funny, unserious, almost like comic relief, as if being sexually confident, self-focused, and unapologetic about pleasure automatically disqualifies you from being taken seriously. In reality, Samantha was the only woman on the show who didn't hate herself and wasn't settling for men. Carrie was a chaos machine. She was self-absorbed, she had toxic relationships, and she was financially irresponsible. This is why she's constantly spiraling. Somehow she is painted as aspirational because she could deliver a cute monologue in Manolos, but I don't get it. Don't get me wrong, flawed characters are interesting. But the writers wanted us to emulate Carrie. They wanted us to see her life as aspirational, not cautionary. And that's where it fails, because Carrie judges all of her friends, and she's especially critical of Samantha. This is not just bad writing, it's intentional. The writers and producers went out of their way to frame Samantha as the odd one out, as if self-respect, confidence, and prioritizing yourself were flaws. They wanted women watching at home to think, oh, Samantha's too much, she's too confident, she's too selfish. But when you zoom out, she is the only one who actually had it figured out. The fact that they had to make her so over the top just to dilute her message says everything. We are actively being told to not end up like Samantha. Because if women as a whole would end up like Carrie, Miranda, or Charlotte, one way or another, they can control you. If you end up like Samantha, you can't be controlled because Samantha knows the clock is ticking and she's going to make the most of it. Carrie is the worst person to end up like. The fact that she's still bouncing between Big and Aiden and she's incompatible with both is proof that those self-centered men that treat her like shit were the only thing that was interesting about her. You could argue that her career is something to aspire to, yes, but they already gave Miranda that plot, and the women on this show are one-dimensional. They can't be two things at the same time. None of the characters age well. Charlotte becomes a cartoon. Miranda is so cynical, and to be fair, she has every reason to be. Carrie just stays messy. They all end up like the worst versions of themselves. Meanwhile, Samantha maintains her steady appetite for men while leading a healthy, well-rounded life outside of them. Here's the twist. What they tried to frame as Samantha's flaws are actually the traits we should admire. She was self-made, she knew her worth, She didn't let relationships define her. She enjoyed her life unapologetically. And unlike Carrie, who always seems to be at war with herself, Samantha was at peace. This is not a joke. That's a role model. Isn't it interesting that Samantha is the only one who stumbles into meaningful relationships when she's not even looking for them? Where Big Macs are not thrown at the TV for moving to Paris, where infidelity and insecurity is managed in a healthy way, where boyfriends are not asked for toothbrushes, they stick with you through cancer. But no, the part where she's been with all these men in New York is the part that they want us to focus on. The women in the show are simply checking boxes, and they're doing so at the cost of their own self esteem. Miranda has to raise a kid she didn't even want, and she is with a man that is as good as having a kid. So, what are they trying to prove? They're trying to prove that career driven women are, in fact, settling for mediocre men that cheat on them, and it's okay because they will get back together. That is what you deserve. That's the best you can do. Charlotte, on the other hand, is this former princess who's dated the best men in New York, who ends up with the ugly guy because she's dated all these men, and her very high standards for them are the reason why she cannot have a family. It's not because the men are emotionally unavailable, it's because she should lower her standards to make room for men that are not her type. This is especially problematic because later they have to add the stares at the nanny plot. This is a nightmare. So, no, Carrie Bradshaw was never the blueprint. And it doesn't matter how many movies or shows they have to make to convince us, Samantha Jones was the blueprint. I see more and more people watch the show thinking that they have to relate to one particular character. And if you're going to take notes from Sex and the City, please don't copy Carrie's chaos, copy Samantha's confidence. Don't get me wrong, I like all of the characters. They're all relatable at some point. But the excuse that I get for Samantha is that she's too sexually liberal. A, there's nothing wrong with that. B, if she is as irresponsible as they want us to believe, why is it that she's the only one talking about important topics like getting tested? They all have multiple partners, and STDs don't discriminate. Why is Samantha the only one who talks about women's needs in bed while the rest of them are faking it and then they cheat on their partners because of that? How is that more responsible? The showrunners want you to think that her confidence and sexual escapades are linked, and they don't have to be. You can be just as confident, self-assured, and not focused on men without actually sleeping with them. In the big year of 2025, let's clarify what sexual liberalism actually means. It means that you have the freedom to sleep around if that's what you want, and you have the freedom to not sleep around if that's what you want. You can do whatever you want because that is what Samantha did.